Thanks again. So let's get started. Kia ora koutou katoa. Ko Mark Fitzpatrick toko ingoa ko taku mahi ki Aotearoa Circle, ko te Director of Partnerships. Hello everyone, very warm welcome. I'm Mark Fitzpatrick, Director of Partnerships at the Aotearoa Circle. Thanks very much for joining us today for a progress update on the development of the Circle's Natural Infrastructure Plan for New Zealand. But first, for those unfamiliar with our work and focus, the Aotearoa Circle convenes public and private sector partners to tackle complex climate and nature challenges that threaten economic growth and future prosperity. Our reports, roadmaps, toolkits, and more tackle the key challenges facing our critical economic sectors, offering practical solutions. Our work is made possible with the support and guidance of our guardians and rangatahi advisory panel. And I'd also like to recognise the truly valued support and contributions of our premium, leading and active partners. With your incredible support, our work to restore our biggest asset, nature, for shared resilience and prosperity is made possible. So thank you so much for your ongoing support. So on to today's discussion. We have the Q&A function activated, so please post any questions you might have throughout today's webinar. We want to gather insights and perspectives from as broad an audience as possible and appreciate your contributions. We will try to answer as many as we can in the Q&A session toward the end. But for those of you not familiar with the Natural Infrastructure Plan, discovery work began earlier this year. Since that time, we've been working in collaboration with our public and private partners, as well as other key stakeholders, to define the plan's scope and intended outcomes. Here's a snapshot of who has been involved thus far. So you can see the engagement has been extensive, and through ongoing collaboration, we've further refined the plan's objectives and finalised its framework. The collaboration has been undertaken under the leadership and guidance of our steering committee, and we thank them for their leadership and continued support. The work itself is being completed to deliver on 5 objectives, which we will discuss later on in the webinar. Each of these is being led collaboratively by our expert partners, as shown on screen, and again, a massive thank you to all of them for their continued support. Today, in the webinar, we're lucky enough to be joined by 3 fantastic experts in this space. First, you'll hear more on this work from Erica Miles. Erica is our Director of Special Projects at the Circle, leading the execution of this work. Her background includes responsible investment and sustainable finance policy development consulting, and program delivery for some of the largest and most highly respected organisations in Aotearoa New Zealand, the United Kingdom and Europe. Erica was co-secretariat and co-author of the Aotearoa Circle's Sustainable Finance Roadmap, and chaired the industry-led committee that developed Aotearoa New Zealand's inaugural Stewardship Code for Investors. So she knows our work well. You'll also hear from 2 partners contributing directly to the plan, Robin Mitchell and Genevieve Smith. Robin is Director and founder of Nature Positive. Robin is an international biodiversity management expert and a restoration ecologist with over 25 years' experience. He specialises in advising corporates, governments, and the finance sector on nature, climate strategy and reporting. Genevieve is a principal sustainability and climate at Becker, providing a wide range of climate and nature services. Her expertise spans enterprise-level advisory services, from strategic planning and business processes integration to project-level implementation and management. We're hugely appreciative of both their time and expertise, alongside ongoing support by fellow Circle partners. But stepping back quickly before Erica shares an update, the Circle's starting point for the development of the Natural Infrastructure Plan was acknowledgement of the pressures upon our natural assets, the resources we rely on to fuel our economy and key sectors. Their increasing fragility due to climate change and human impacts is not only a barrier to our environment's health, but our success and future growth as a trading nation. The Circle exists to address the challenge that natural capital is taken for granted and not priced into our economic activity. It's seen as free, and short-term gains are dominating long-term prosperity. And we have unsustainable market settings which are limiting the successful integration of sustainable practices. We know we need to invest in built infrastructure to support our economic outcomes. It's essential for a productive economy. While we maintain that nature is also, it facilitates goods and or services just like built infrastructure does, yet we don't have a plan for its investment. That's why we're developing a long-term natural infrastructure plan. It will provide both a framework to protect and harness our assets and support critical infrastructure needs. Natural infrastructure has been proven to build resilience, better safeguard communities, restore and protect environments, unlock investment opportunities, and deliver cost efficiencies. For that reason, our vision is to bring built infrastructure and our natural infrastructure planning together to leverage the shared benefits and, importantly, protect and grow our economy. But first, it's important to understand what we mean when we talk natural infrastructure. Natural infrastructure is nature-based solutions that apply to infrastructure challenges. Our vision is to bring infrastructure and natural infrastructure together so we can achieve enduring prosperity for New Zealand. The plan helps us secure that vision. It's a coordinated long-term plan to support how we best harness natural infrastructure to support our infrastructure needs. So what's in scope? This is a diagrammatic representation of the scope of the plan. We recognise the economy includes nature, the assets within nature, and the built environment. The scope of the plan will include natural infrastructure, which facilitates goods and or services for the bioeconomy, blue economy, tourism, and network infrastructure. So there was a lot in that, but I'm now like to hand over to Erica, to bring Erica into the webinar to share more on the objectives of the plan and the outcomes we're intending to deliver. Erica, thank you for joining us. Over to you.
Kia ora, thank you, Mark. Ko Erica Miles, aho. So Mark has shared I am the delivery lead for the National Infrastructure Plan, and I'm excited to be sharing this update on the plan's development with you. I appreciate that some of you may be familiar with the objectives of the plan, but some elements have been refined since our last update, and for some of you this will be entirely new. So how do we take the vision of the plan that Mark has just outlined and translate this into tangible objectives which we can deliver the required outcomes? So since our last webinar, we've undertaken extensive engagement with the public and private sectors, and we've also completed more thinking on what we collectively need to address the infrastructure challenges and have landed on 5 core objectives. Now, these 5 core objectives are based upon the theory of change. So let me take you through those 5 objectives now. The first objective is to acknowledge and understand, and this is about building a common appreciation of the vulnerabilities and benefits of natural infrastructure. It's about us collectively acknowledging the imperative for natural infrastructure on our economic prosperity. And for this reason, our plan will clearly articulate how natural infrastructure could address public and private challenges such as adaptation to climate change. It will also outline the benefits of mainstreaming natural infrastructure as an approach to long-term resilience. The second objective is to build the business case, and this is about providing us with the tools to support investment decisions in natural infrastructure. Now, Robin from Nature Positive has been working with us to develop this investment decision framework, and he will be sharing more on this shortly. And as with any good plan, the proof is in the pudding, and this is where our third objectives come in. So Jen from Becker is helping us with this objective, which is to demonstrate the business case for natural infrastructure, and we plan on doing this through 5 case studies, and Jen will discuss more on this shortly. Our fourth objective is to drive innovation and investment, and that's focused on identifying the innovative investment opportunities that in our key economic sectors that market-led natural infrastructure investment would support. And this is the key focus of our executive forum in Wellington on the 30th of October, and Mark will cover that off before we close. So it's one thing to have all this plan on paper, but it's the critical magic happens when we take all the action and we turn it into results. And this is where our 5th objective comes in, which is focused on enabling and driving scale to deliver real-world impacts. And here we are planning on providing a set of agreed recommendations that we can collectively take to remove the barriers and realise the investment opportunities. And with the collective support from the public and the private sectors, we are ultimately wanting to fulfil the vision of the plan, which is to bring infrastructure and natural infrastructure together so that we can achieve enduring prosperity for Aotearoa New Zealand. So what does that enduring prosperity look like in the context of this natural infrastructure plan? Well, there are 5 key elements to this. The first is to attract investment in and the use of natural infrastructure. The second is to build resilience to our assets. The third is to deliver sustainable economic growth and job opportunities and safeguard our communities. And finally, the additive piece is to protect, restore, conserve, and can sustainably use our natural infrastructure. So now let's move on to the deliverables. So these deliverables have been informed by public and private sector engagement and what the users of the natural infrastructure would like to see. So we've centered them around the 5 objectives. The first one is a chapter or some context that could be included within the infrastructure plan for the government and also the DPMC's program on national resilience framework that they're working on that articulates the multiple benefits of natural infrastructure. The second is the policy map. So we are aware that there are a lot of activities underway in government and within the private sector, but having a central source of the truth was deemed to be a really considered a value add for the NIP. The business case, the investment decision framework, Robin will talk about that shortly. We're going to have 5 impactful case studies that demonstrate the multi-factor benefits that are articulated through that investment decision framework, and that's the work that Jen is doing. The investment opportunity overview, number 6, that outlines the key investment triggers and enabling factors to support natural infrastructure investment. And finally, number 7 is the actual plan itself. And this will include a roadmap of impactful recommended next steps for the public and private sectors to take to scale investment in natural infrastructure. Hopefully, this will include agreed actions by our public and private sector leaders, and it will also include a recommendation around a blue economy strategy to help realise the investment opportunities in that economic sector. So now let's in terms of developing the NIP itself, I just wanted to cover the underlying principles of the NIP that we are working with as we develop this. The first one is to have a transparent and collaborative approach. So as Mark has already outlined, we have engaged extensively with the private and the public sector to date, and we have significant engagement planned on our key deliverables. We want to ensure that our actions are clear and practical and stimulate innovation. We also want to ensure the outcomes of the report respect and safeguard our local communities as well as iwi Māori. We want to have an infrastructure plan that responds to international best practice principles and to ensure that our investments are sustainably funded, efficiently used, and delivering social benefit. We want to ensure that our work aligns with domestic and key sustainable finance standards and taxonomies to more easily attract investment. We also want to ensure that economic, social, cultural, and the environmental outcomes are evaluated collectively. And lastly, we want to ensure that whilst natural infrastructure may contribute significantly to climate adaptation and improve resilience, we also appreciate that it does not replace the need for rapid, deep, and sustained reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. And lastly, we want to ensure that we are maintaining our commitments under the Rio Conventions, our Paris Agreement, and also our international free trade agreements. So without further ado, let me now delve into objectives 2 and 3 by passing over to Robin from Nature Positive. So over to you, Robin.
Thanks, Erica. Kia ora, everybody. Thanks for joining us and for the interest in the project. So yeah, this slide just shows the 4 stages that we've developed of our appraisal process, and sitting for projects, and sitting underneath this, which I'll go into a little bit, are 2 other elements. So they are the principles that we think that any natural infrastructure project should adhere to, and also a cost-benefit analysis framework with the various indicators which cover financial, social, environmental and cultural elements. But when we're talking about appraisal of projects, just to be clear what we're talking with and the cost benefit analysis that goes with that, it's either going to be looking at substitution for grey, so where green, teal or blue infrastructure, natural infrastructure will substitute grey. So for example, we might be thinking about flood protection for farmland and for built infrastructure for valued assets. And we might be looking at an alternative between a piece of grey infrastructure, stop bank structures, etc., or green, for example, regenerating wetlands. So the appraisal process in that situation would be comparing grey with green. Another way in which we would be using this appraisal process would be where you're looking at various grades, amounts of integration of natural infrastructure with what is primarily a piece of grey infrastructure. So using again the sort of the floodplain flood protection, or it could be coastal flood protection example, we could have primarily a piece of grey infrastructure, but you're integrating, let's say, coastal marsh restoration or mangrove restoration into that piece of infrastructure. And so in that case, you'd be using the project appraisal process to look at the alternative designs of the different types and amounts of natural infrastructure that may or may not be advantageous to include. And so just looking through the process here, the eligibility process will really just be exploring the natural infrastructure options that might be, technically feasible and available in that location and for that solution, and establishing at the high level that our principles would be applied. I'll go into a couple of those in a second. Then once you'd established that it was in principle eligible, going through to materiality, and that's where we're looking for our key benefits to see if the key benefits at a qualitative level are likely to be able to be achieved. And we're talking obviously about the environmental and social outcomes. The climate risk reduction is an absolutely key one for the use of natural infrastructure, and where a lot of evidence base is in terms of reducing long-term costs for maintenance, emissions reductions, removals, etc. So lots of materiality sort of domains there. Again, qualitative at this stage. Then entering, if it passes that, into feasibility, where you would actually have, an initial design for your piece of, let's say, hybrid infrastructure, and you would then be able to estimate the cost benefits at a qualitative. And then if it passes that through to the proper investability, whereby you're actually doing a proper cost benefit analysis and you're actually looking at the financials in order to be able to make an investment decision. Those key principles, just quickly emphasizing, we're quite clear that, although the overarching sort of goal is obviously to gain more investment through hybrid, through hybrid infrastructure, gain more investment in natural capital, every project has to have a net economic benefit in order to really sort of justify that investment. So there we're talking about, it could be in the design, the construction, the operation, or the maintenance phase. So we're talking about both CapEx and OpEx here. And again, that net economic benefit from experience both in this country and internationally is likely to be either from it being cheaper to construct, that's often the case for natural infrastructure, or crucially, over the long term of lifetime of that asset, that infrastructure asset, actually cheaper to maintain, especially when you're considering resilience to climate hazards. So economic benefit, net economic benefit compared to the alternative is a key principle that the nature-based solution you're looking at is fit for purpose over the asset lifetime, that in the construction of whatever you're doing, there's a do no harm sort of principle, socially, environmentally. And then finally, that you would actually have a positive environmental outcome from that investment in natural capital within the context of the overall asset relative to business as usual. So that brings us on to the just the next slide, please. Now, this represents an adapted version of the World Bank Nature Finance Framework. It's important to point out that we're not developing a finance taxonomy as part of this project. There are many sustainable finance taxonomies out there. There's EU taxonomy, there's related to various green bonds, etc. And Toitu Tahua, of course, is in the process of developing a sustainable finance taxonomy for New Zealand. So that's the one that would be likely to apply to these type of projects. But the reason why we've got this up is really just to sort of emphasize in terms of the overall goals of the Aotearoa Circle and the natural infrastructure plan, what we're meaning, what kind of outcomes we're meaning in terms of nature finance. So we're talking about the right-hand two columns. Anything that would pass the principles for investment in the natural infrastructure plan would be in either of the right-hand side two columns. Now, the key difference of those with the one on the left really represents business as usual. So if you might think about, a road construction project that would have gone through the RMA, we would expect the RMA to do a really good job of managing the social environmental liabilities, and there might be, an offset, biodiversity offsets kind of scheme, to compensate for any harm. Whereas on the right-hand side two columns, what we're actually doing here is we're positively investing in nature-based solutions which are integrated into those projects. And therefore, by doing so, relative to business as usual, the project that's been through the RMA but is principally grey, let's say, you do actually have a net benefit compared to business as usual, net outcome environmentally in terms of our natural capital. And then moving across to the right-hand side column, nature positive finance, really the difference between the middle and the right-hand side depends on just how much natural infrastructure might be integrated within that project. So when I talked earlier about, some of them might be substitution. So you might find in your floodplain example that actually the cheapest, most resilient solution is around catchment management, is around wetland recreation for that floodplain. Now, obviously there you're entirely investing in restoring, recreating and enhancing, the natural infrastructure to absorb those floods. In that case, it would definitely be in the nature positive finance side. So now I'd like to pass over to Jen, please, from Becca.
Thank you, Robin, and kia ora koutou. So yes, our work for the plan will dovetail together quite nicely, and a lot of what Robin has covered in terms of objective 2 neatly fits into what I'll talk us through today, which is essentially objective 3, which is how we're going about selecting those case studies that are really going to achieve the outcomes that we're looking to promote for the plan, but also working through the framework that Robin's just explained. And so really key goals here are obviously aligning to driving economic outcomes and prosperity for the country, as well as delivering those multi-factor benefits over different time horizons, not just for the project itself, but at a much wider scale. And so the process we're kind of looking at to go through and how we might select these projects, we're certainly at a long list stage. I might emphasize that at this stage. It's very early days, but we're looking to find projects that align to the government's national infrastructure plan. So we're looking at key network infrastructure categories, typical ones there: transport, water, ports and airports, electricity and gas, telecoms. So all of those kind of network infrastructure projects that are typical to support economic growth of the country. So we want to be able to show, as Robin has articulated, that, you know, the mainstreaming of the use of natural infrastructure is the goal here, delivering net outcomes and net positive outcomes where possible. So we know a lot of the infrastructure projects to date have got elements of natural infrastructure within them. So we'll be trying to find perhaps the best examples we can where we've had net outcomes achieved, possibly net positive, we'll see. But we'll be sourcing that space initially. We'll be looking to find examples of projects and case studies that align to key economic sectors as well. So this is outside the infrastructure space, so thinking more about broad built environment, the tourism sector, the blue economy, the primary sector. So these are where we've identified sectors that are dependent on natural assets, and where we can find projects, case studies, examples of where those natural assets are providing infrastructure services to that sector of the economy and to businesses within them that can demonstrate economic outcomes and biodiversity outcomes. So probably less, I'd imagine, less examples historically of that kind of wider use of natural infrastructure. But we know there's a lot of pilot projects coming through both here in New Zealand and overseas that we'll be looking to reference. In both of those cases, it will be important that these projects can demonstrate the financial business case, as Robin's mentioned. So that is looking at project costs, capital outlay, maintenance costs, but wherever possible, if there's data or information that can point to wider economic benefits, perhaps at catchment scale, at community scale, we'll be looking to try and find those particular projects. And again, looking to find projects that can deliver those multi-factor benefits at scale. So touch briefly again on those broad economic, environmental, cultural and social outcomes that we're looking to achieve, and not just at the project scale, but beyond. And we'll be interested in where we can find and showcase projects that are essentially scalable. So an example of a project that could be widely replicated across New Zealand, both at perhaps in the infrastructure space, but also within those broad economic sectors, how well those solutions could be picked up. And obviously it goes without saying that the key thing here as well will be delivering positive benefits to those natural assets. So where we can find data that demonstrates no net loss, possibly net gain, those are the kind of projects that we'll be looking to rise to the top. So yes, so we have a wide range of possibilities here within New Zealand in terms of historical projects, pilot projects that are coming through, research that's been done, as well as coupled with information that's been published from overseas. And so the net will be cast wide for this part of the project to surface a long list of case studies, which will then be filtered through to find the best case studies that demonstrate the case for investment in our natural assets. And I think at this point, I'll hand back to Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Robin, Erica. That was a fantastic overview of the work you have underway. Really looking forward to talking to you a bit more about this. Before we do, just a reminder to everyone that's attending the webinar, there is a Q&A function. So please do fire through any questions you may have. They're valuable for us, not just from the perspective of being able to ask the experts we have today, but we want to gather insights. We'd like to know your thoughts, so please do feel free to use that function. Robin, can I come to you, please? What do you think success would look like within this work stream, and what could the Natural Infrastructure Plan deliver if successful?
Thank you. Yeah, I think success would be quite simple, really, that through the partnership that the Aotearoa Circle has and the awareness that those partners hopefully would gain, and the practice they would gain through applying the plan and the tools that we're developing, that we would see more hybrid infrastructure and pure natural infrastructure being implemented in this country, that it would be built on time and on budget, that in doing so, we'd get more resilient infrastructure into the future, which would mean we'd have more money left over, whether it's from the national government budget or whether it's from private sector. We're probably looking at public-private partnerships. We'd have more money left over to develop our infrastructure. We know there's a huge infrastructure gap in this country looking ahead. And at the same time, of course, we'd have increased natural capital. So yeah, better infrastructure, lasting longer, cheaper to build, and using nature cleverly so that we've got net positive outcomes for nature.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Robin. Really, really good insights. And Erica, if I could come to you, something that has been asked is why we're not including social housing in the mix. Are you able to talk to that at all?
Yeah, sure, Mark. Yeah, we have been asked in terms of the scope of the network infrastructure, why we are not including the social aspects. For the simple reason we need to focus on the assets that are critical to our economic sectors. So primarily the blue economy, the bioeconomy and the tourism sector. So that's why we focused on the network infrastructure assets such as the water and wastewater, the ports and airports, and the telecom. So that's the scope of our work. Wouldn't want to say that the recommendations would not necessarily be applicable to social, but at this stage we're very much focusing on the natural infrastructure and the scope that natural infrastructure supports in terms of our network infrastructure.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Thanks, Erica. And Jen, fantastic overview of the potential case studies that you're exploring and the attributes associated with them. Look, we know there's a lot of nature-related work underway already. What's different about this piece of work?
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to perhaps that it's being driven by the circle as a really key and interesting point here. I mean, it's such a public-private partnership organisation, you know, that ability to canvass such a wide range of expertise and opinions and inputs to something like this, I think makes it quite unique. It's certainly bringing together a number of collaborators on this plan, which is great to see. It's providing an opportunity to bring together both work that's being done in New Zealand, building on research that's done, building on pilot projects that are out there, building on like institutional knowledge that different partners have, and really bringing that together in one place at a really key juncture, I imagine, in the discussion around infrastructure for New Zealand. And so thinking about how we can put that New Zealand lens across the work that's been done and bring that together in one place. And I think also obviously with the opportunity of the Fenwick Forum coming up next year, you know, that's again a unique forum that doesn't happen very often, and it's tabling something quite important here to be discussed and debated, and those formed opinions on something like this will be super valuable.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jen. And look, we've had incredible engagement and insight being provided to us. Often one of the questions is like, what is this? What is natural infrastructure? So Robin, I'd like to come to you. Make it tangible, and we've touched on a few examples, but to make it tangible for those that are attending, can you give us some solid examples of natural infrastructure? What is it? How does it actually function?
Yeah, sure, of course. So, you know, I mentioned the reason why I mentioned a couple of times, you know, earlier the sort of the floodplain engineering, floodplain protection is because, you know, that is a current issue in New Zealand, you know, where we've got actually a lot of infrastructure, built infrastructure, and of course, you know, productive land. Primary sector, you know, productive land that is vulnerable to flooding, and we've seen a lot of damage, obviously, occurring in these last years. Now, Bofamuskal, which is also helping out with this plan, have identified no less than 30 different projects of different scales all around the country that are at different stages of design and feasibility that are looking at the possibility of including some type of natural infrastructure in with floodplain management. So going away from perhaps, you know, what we might term an old-fashioned approach of, you know, the grey sort of bounding in of a river, to thinking more laterally around, you know, to what extent could, you know, the recreation of wetlands and basically areas to, you know, sink water. I mean, we know that a wetland, an acre of wetland can absorb, if you will, or retain during times of peak flow, peak flooding, 3 feet. So 3 feet acres. So that's a huge volume of water within its area. So that's the type of thing we're talking about. And there's been a massive study done in these last couple of years in the United States, where with increased hurricanes, they've experienced a similar issue to us here more recently in New Zealand, around billions and billions of dollars of built infrastructure damage through flooding. So they put a lot of money into these kind of cost benefit analyses that we're talking about. And through a study looking at dozens of schemes that have been put in place over the last 10 to 20 years, they found a cost benefit ratio of 7 to 1. So that means, it's a seventh the price on average to build your hybrid infrastructure, so to include some of that natural infrastructure in, than it would be to build the grey infrastructure, if you include that maintenance part of the cycle, the longevity of that asset. Another really good example is with coastal protection. So again, in New Zealand, we have a big issue coming forward, in terms of our adaptation to climate change around protection of coastal infrastructure, with rising sea levels and increasing storm intensity and frequency. And we know, rather like the wetland example, with coastal marshes in the south of the country, or mangrove systems in the north of the country, we know that they absorb up to 2/3 of the energy of systems coming in to our coasts. Now, we also know that we've got an insurance issue in this country going forward. Lloyd's has just released a report that shows that we're the second most at-risk country in terms of natural hazards of our infrastructure, and it's questionable how much insurance is going to be able to cover us into the future. Now, Swiss Re, working with the World Bank, has developed a parametric insurance product in Mexico, whereby essentially you've got a strip of about 100 kilometers, which is very hurricane exposed, of coastline, with billions of dollars of built infrastructure. And they've developed an insurance product whereby you've got lower premiums payable, where all the premium payers go into a trust fund, and that trust fund pays for the ongoing maintenance and restoration of the quality of the reef, of the offshore reef, protecting that infrastructure. So you've got that system whereby the premium's lower for everybody by virtue of some of that money going into the restoration of that natural infrastructure that sits off the coast. And we could see that kind of thing, happening here in New Zealand, as I say, with some of our coastal infrastructure issues going forward. So there's a couple of examples.
Well, that's excellent, Robin. It's compelling. It's compelling when you weave all those factors together. It's incredibly compelling. And great to have that global perspective. We're focused here in New Zealand, but when you bring in what's going on around the globe, often these challenges aren't too unique. So it's fantastic to be able to bring that into the mix. Eric, I want to come to you and just acknowledge Joanna. Great to see you here today, and thank you for your question. So a question that has come through the Q&A regarding engagement with government, Erica. So given the government's focus on NBS started this year, how has engagement with government on this progressed? And how do you think this will land with government coming out the end, just to add to that?
Sure, that's a great question. Thanks for raising it. The engagement with the government has been extensive. We have engaged with multiple agencies, including the usual suspects, but some of the more unusual suspects as well. The overarching feedback from the engagement sessions has helped shape the deliverables. So we are definitely taking a very collaborative approach, and a good example there is that policy map, which is going to be seen as a strong value add, and the consolidated investment decision framework has also been informed by the government consultation. So we have further government consultation planned to showcase the work from BOFA and also from Nature Positive and the investment decision framework, and also the vulnerabilities and dependencies piece from objective number 1, which is to understand and to raise awareness and get a sole source of the truth. The second part of the question is we expect the plan to land well if we keep playing our cards correctly. We are having, as a circle, we are having minister meetings with the appropriate ministers. We've also met with a significant number of directors within the government agencies that are applicable. So far we're on track for a good landing of this within the government.
That's excellent. Thanks, Erica. A great overview, and it has been excellent to be a part of these engagement sessions with government to get that feedback and see the positive feedback that we've had. Jen, one last question for you before we close for the day. Some sort of examples of the case studies that are on the long list right now. So, Robin's mentioned a couple of potential examples, but what are some of the specific things you're looking at?
Yeah, it's I mean, as Robin's touched on, a lot of the space has got a watery element to it. So, in terms of using natural infrastructure to help generate those economic outcomes, it's, a lot of it's to do with flooding, attenuation, treatment, even if you can link the erosion of steeper slopes of land, it's all got a bit of a water element to it. So yeah, some great examples from Robin. Some of the other things that we're looking at can include things that might cover some of the urban areas as an example. So the use of large-scale rain gardens as an example over in Westport at the moment. That's really using the width of some of those broad streets they've got down there to kind of establish some more significant sized rain gardens through those streets to slow the flood events that they're having through the Westport region, assisting with contaminant removals at that point. So those kind of things are really scalable because we've got a lot of cities and towns within New Zealand that have the ability to kind of switch some of that grey infrastructure out in the broad streets that we've got. Some of the other things we're looking at a bit more unique perhaps in terms of freshwater, pilots of freshwater purification using enhanced natural systems that basically eliminate the use of any chemicals. And so you can see that applicability for both, manufacturing use of purified water through to agricultural use through to drinking water for communities. So trying to use those natural systems to eliminate anything that could be considered additive in terms of grey infrastructure. There's thinking also about the coastal infrastructure that we have. So Robin's touched on the dunes and the mangroves, but also thinking about a great example came from one of our teams a while back of a historical project that was put in Omaha, out as a seawall in Omaha to protect the dune and coastal erosion of that beach, and obviously all of the infrastructure and the housing development that was there at the time and has subsequently been built. Obviously it's a bit of a unique example, but we are trying to cast our mind quite broadly to where some of these more interesting things that we might have done in the past and not labelled in this way could actually have delivered us some real economic outcomes that could be a good reference point of interest in some of this.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Fantastic to see some of the innovative examples coming through today. Look, Robin, Erica, Jen, I just want to thank you again for coming along today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for continued effort on this project. Look, for everyone that's participating here today and has attended, thank you for the questions that have come through as well. Great to see some familiar names like Cornelia and Beth and others. Thank you. We will take this in as feedback. In some instances, we'll be reaching out directly, but certainly it gives us insights to the areas that people are curious about. Before we do close today's webinar, I'd like to share the steps we're taking from here to build the plan and the associated timeframes. So, as you've heard today, the Natural Infrastructure Plan is being built through true collaboration with insights from our partners and others from across business and government. Our next major milestone on engagement is the Executive Forum in Wellington on the 30th of October, where experts, leaders, and decision makers will come together to shape this work. So there'll be a chance to connect across sectors, identify scalable investment opportunities, and tackle the barriers holding natural infrastructure back. If you haven't yet received an invitation, please reach out. We want to ensure we capture a wide range of perspectives, and your involvement would be hugely valued. From there, we'll ensure intergenerational perspectives are woven in with our Future Voices Forum in November. So this is where the insights, ideas and perspectives from our Rangatahi Advisory Panel and under 30s from other organisations will be heard as we further build the plan over the coming months. And then on 4th of March, we'll place a peg in the sand, and we're sharing the plan with our partner CEOs and senior leaders at the Whenua Forum Hui at Parliament. To reiterate, before we end this update today, we believe the Natural Infrastructure Plan is a landmark piece of work for New Zealand, but its success depends on all of us. The more people we have in the waka paddling in the same direction, the faster and more directly we can get to where we need to go, a stronger, more resilient and prosperous Aotearoa. Please do share this webinar for people who may not have been able to attend, your colleagues. It will be made available on our website. Thank you again for your time today and your interest in the plan. If you want to be involved, and equally if you're not a partner and would like to be, please do reach out to us. We'd love to have you in the circle and work more on this important mahi. Ngā mihi nui. Thank you very much.